Hello, how are you guys doing? So today's lecture is from my backyard. It's an amazing place, and my neighborhood's an amazing neighborhood, so you'll hear noises. There could occasionally be a squirrel or raccoon who comes by to join us, but hopefully nothing that will make me scream in front of you. So my goal here is to be informative, but relatively brief, which I know just brought a cheer from at least 2 or 3 of you. So, hope you're all having a nice time at home, that you're tired of playing video games at this point and ready to think about World War II, because you're probably thinking your life is rough right now. But remember, those folks made it through the Great Depression and World War II, and they mostly, well, not all of them, but lots of them turned out fine. And then some of them didn't so much, but we won't talk about them because that would be sad. And we don't need to do that. So you may have noticed, oh no, my notes just flew away. You may have noticed online that you have assignments to do and that you need to submit those by Friday of each week. So make sure that you do that. And hopefully my notes will help you with those assignments. And certainly stuff in this video is designed to help you with the assignments. My thought is that you should use the textbook for your information or any links that I've provided in the assignment. So please do that. Excuse me while I pick up my notes. All right, here we go. Let me put the mouse on them so maybe they won't blow away this time. We'll see. All right, so you probably heard about World War II. It wasn't a secret. It was after World War I, shockingly enough. Our foreign policy after World War I was pretty much to not have another world war. So we stayed out of stuff, except we sold to people, of course. That's what we do, because God bless the United States, that's what we do. You know, we got to sell stuff and make money, which is still kind of an issue today, isn't it? Because people do need money to pay bills, and it's a serious issue. It is. It's a legitimate concern. But don't watch too much of the news, because we really probably don't have to choose between your grandparents and dinner. But, oh, no, I didn't just say that. All right. So here's some thoughts that might help you with the assignment. Now, first of all, we stay out of World War II for as long as we can, because World War I was bad. But Hitler, I mean, you know, if Hitler's doing stuff like taking over the neighbors, you can only ignore that for so long. Now, you probably are aware that Hitler wasn't exactly what brought us into World War II. What brought us into World War II was Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a naval base. It's a city, too. But was a naval base in Hawaii, and it got attacked by the Japanese, unprovoked. I've heard the speech from FDR. And that caused us to declare war on Japan. And then because Japan was involved in a group called the Axis powers, Japan, Italy, and Germany, the other parts of that axis declared war on us after we declared war on Japan, and then it was on. Now, because we're the United States, we typically think that as soon as we're in, everybody gets scared and goes home. Like, U.S. is here. But that's not exactly how it worked. We enter the war on December 8th. Of 1941, a day after Pearl Harbor Day. And if you're wondering, did it take us a long time to decide to enter World War II? Not really. But the way that we declare war in the United States, according to the Constitution, is you have to have the Congress get together and vote on a declaration of war. And once that declaration of war is voted on, they pass that to the president, and then the president accepts the declaration of war and then makes a speech where he talks about 4 freedoms or making the world safe for democracy or whatever he talks about. So, as I've probably just alluded to, when FDR makes the declaration of war, he mentions that we are fighting so that the rest of the world would have access to the 4 freedoms. See if I can get all 4 of them. Freedom of worship, freedom of speech, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And that will lead a few groups in the United States to say, hey, we'd like those 4 freedoms as well. So World War II clearly is a ground-changing event for the entire world, but it's also going to lead to lots of new pushes for civil rights within the United States, because our thought is, if we can make the rest of the world safe for all of these things, it's probably time to make sure everyone within our own country has access to these freedoms as well. Okay, so we stay out of World War II for a while because we can, and it doesn't directly affect us. But one of the questions I'm asking you on your assignment this week is, how do you know that we tend to favor the Allies rather than the Axis powers? There's good information in your book, so I don't want to spoil it for you, because I know some of you are going to read the book for the first time and you're going to go, that was amazing. Serna was telling the truth. This is a really good textbook. For a textbook, I know it's not Harry Potter or whatever else kids read nowadays, but it's a pretty good textbook. And you'll notice, as I've told you, Dr. Foner does emphasize how there's a theme of freedom or liberty throughout the U.S. experience. So he'll talk quite a bit in this chapter about how we wanted liberty or freedom for the rest of the world, and then how different groups wanted that liberty or freedom as well. Make sure when you're answering the first question that you talk about different laws or policies that we had about supplying different countries. Which countries did we supply? Which countries did we not supply? Were any countries mad about that? Did we freeze the assets of any individuals within the United States? Or did we just say, hey, you can have all the money you want. We really don't care what you're doing to our allies? My guess is that's not what we did. I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Make sure that you watch that really cool video that I gave you a link to, which is, it's an astonishing piece of propaganda. Now, propaganda isn't necessarily a lie. It may just be a persuasive exaggeration of the truth. And I say that because I know that you completely trust our government, so I don't want you to think that the government was lying to you, because that film was made by the U.S. government. And you might notice that was Dwight Eisenhower's brother. My gosh, he would never lie. So he's not lying. I'm not saying that he is, but there may be an exaggeration of the truth going on in that video. So that video is about something called Japanese internment or relocation. Now, it's not exactly the same as a concentration camp, but it's not a fun stay in the desert. You know, it's not a vacation. And we put people in internment camps starting in 1942, and they don't get out until after the war is over. There's a lot of irony in the reasons we let them out, perhaps during the internment. Sometimes we let them go out to work on farms because, as the video will state, farm labor is badly needed. Many of the people that were in the camps, we took their farms away from them. So if we really needed that agricultural production, perhaps we should have left them on their farms and let them produce. But as it said in the beginning of the video, maybe they weren't farming, maybe they were spying while they were planting fruit and vegetables. It's hard to say. If you're wondering, was this constitutional? Yes and no. So when the Korematsu versus the United States case came before the Supreme Court during the internment process, the Supreme Court said, yes, it was constitutional. It's a time of war, so we have unusual government abilities to take away certain rights, like, I don't know, the 4th and 5th and 7th and 14th, and probably a couple of other amendments if we could think of them. But the Supreme Court ruled in Korematsu versus the United States that this was technically a legal process. So taking people out of their homes, confiscating their property, and causing them billions of dollars in loss, in addition to losing several years of their freedom, was okay. So that's hopefully something we can learn from as we move forward in the future. Even in our most trying times, we haven't done anything quite like that since then. So, I mean, you know, at least we're making progress, I suppose. One of the other things that I find astonishing, and if you have free time, and I know you do, you could read about the Nisei soldiers or the 442nd Combat Regiment. These are guys who volunteered out of the internment camps and said, you know what I want to do? Fight for my country. Now, I think I'm a super nice, generous kind of person and pretty forgiving. And, you know, if you do crappy things to me, I'll probably overlook it at some point. Although I know I made some fun of you sometimes for working on things during class you shouldn't work on. And I think one of you cussed about prom, and two of you were late to class and didn't bring donuts. So I know I gave you a hard time. But these soldiers, my goodness, they forgave a country that took away all their rights and freedoms and fought for this country and fought to defeat oppression overseas after they'd received it here in the United States. And most of the folks that were interviewed about that said that they did it to show their government that they were wrong about them possibly having loyalties to another country. So I think that's one of the most astonishing things you may ever read about in U.S. history. So kudos to Nisei soldiers, because what the heck, that's amazing. But make sure you watch the video and look for things in the video that you think might be untrue. And if you're wondering, were those videos, the clips where they show people kind of waving and smiling as they go off to camps, were those made up? You got to remember, the technology back then wasn't quite as good as it is now. So they couldn't really make up those videos. They were true videos of people trying to put on a brave face for the rest of their families, or show that they were courageous, or do also culturally appropriate things where you didn't necessarily show fear or your anger in public. Now, there are lots of things you can read. There's a book called Farewell to Manzanar, or How Baseball Saved Us. There's several books, if you want, free book review, that you could read about what people's actual experiences were like in those camps. And they're hard to read, but they're important pieces of literature and history, sometimes a combination of both. All right, so we had spent a lot of our history culturally in the United States convincing women that the best place for them was in the home. You remember Miller versus Oregon, where the Supreme Court said, you ladies go to work, the kids will go crazy, dad's going to feed them too much chocolate, everything's going to be a mess. So we want to limit the number of hours that you can work because it's bad for society if you're working. Plus, there were lots of theorists during that time period who said, you know what, you're going to be ugly if you get too much education and work too much, and you might also be infertile. You can't have kids. So no woman wants to be ugly and infertile during that time period. So the government and society is trying to remind women that to stay pretty and be able to have babies, that you probably need to stay out of college and stay out of the workforce. Okay. Fast forward to World War II. We drafted a bunch of dudes, and we need to be the most productive nation in the world. And if you read a lot about World War II, Foner writes several books about World War II as well. If you're starting to enjoy the textbook and you're thinking, I'd like more of this guy, he does write about World War II as well. But part of what makes the U.S. contribution so important in World War II is that we are the arsenal of democracy, but we're also the grocery store of democracy. We're like the H-E-B of the world during that time period. So our productivity really matters, because the rest of the world's getting the crap bombed out of them. Us, not so much. So our factories aren't disturbed as much, and our workplaces aren't. But we have sent millions of dudes overseas. So the dudes can't do the work anymore because they're overseas making the world safe for democracy. By the way, I know some women are overseas making the world safe for democracy then as well. And the four freedoms, as we've mentioned already. But we've just spent several generations convincing women staying home is good for them. Now we need them to go to work. So that same part of the government that brought you that nice internment camp video is also going to push popular artists like Norman Rockwell to help promote the idea of women in the workplace being a good thing. So Rosie the Riveter, you notice how she's not ugly, okay? So I know that lots of groups nowadays use the Rosie the Riveter poster to show women's empowerment. And you know I'm for that, because here I am being empowered in my backyard to give you a nice lecture about U.S. history. But during that time period, part of the reason Rosie looks good is because we wanted to remind women that you didn't necessarily turn ugly and infertile just because you got a job. And we really need you to go do stuff, make stuff for the war effort. Also remember how we'd been broke We had that Great Depression thing that lasted about a decade. Well, dang, that thing's over now because everybody's working. So we got all kinds of money, and of course, nothing to buy because everything we're making is for the for the war effort. So pretty soon, we're going to have a whole bunch of money. Actually, we'll have a whole bunch of money in the 40s, but people aren't saying, hey, let's go shopping because one, there's, World War II, and two, oh, dang, bug bit me. Two, there's nothing to buy. I mean, all the stuff, we're rationing stuff. Oh, crud. I know you're a little nervous right now because we're in a weird time historically. And if you go to H-E-B, you got to get there like 6 in the morning. I know they don't open that early, but you got to get there early to get your toilet paper. And, you probably don't need that much toilet paper, but hopefully it'll be all right. But if you're out of stuff, there's certain things you can't buy. Like, oh my gosh, Coke Zero. It was pretty serious. But yeah, I found some the other day, so now I'm okay. But yeah, we run out of your favorite stuff. Back in the 40s, they were rationing stuff. I mean, flat out rationing stuff. You couldn't buy tires. They weren't making cars. Like I saw a commercial where they're delivering a new Cadillac to your home. I'm signing up for that because I got teacher retirement and ACC cash. So a new Cadillac's going to be my thing. But it's not even so much that you couldn't go out and shop for stuff. There just wasn't stuff for you to buy because we were sending it overseas to our allies to make sure they had everything they needed for the war effort because they really couldn't produce stuff. So World War II is a time of sacrifice on the home front, and we made it through, and it was an extended time, like several years. So I think this time, this COVID-19 time, may be a little longer than we want, but I'm pretty sure it won't be 4 years. So try to use history to calm you down. History's good for you. History won't break up with you. History teaches you nice lessons. History won't yell at you. Sometimes history can bring you comfort and can show you that we can make it through difficult things. So use history to calm you down. See, read that book. It's going to make you feel better. I know that it is. All right. And the last question, because I know, my goodness, I've talked to you already for 17 minutes, and you're probably going, will she ever stop talking? You know the answer to that. No. Okay. Last question. Why was the U.S. contribution essential to the war effort? This is mostly where I tell you that if you go overseas to visit, because I know that's probably what you're going to do really soon, like this summer or next year, you're going to say, I'm going to Europe. If you go to Europe, have you seen the t-shirt that says USA 2 and 0 in World Wars? Don't wear that shirt. Don't wear that shirt. Now, it's the United States. We're proud. We should be. It's a great country. But our thought is always, we showed up and the war was over. You noticed, if you read this chapter, that wasn't true, and you knew that anyway. We enter the war in 41. The war ends in 45, and it ends because of some pretty harsh things that are, mentioned in question 4. And that's, of course, where you can talk about if that was a necessary action. I know it's really common in the modern era to talk about how maybe dropping those bombs was excessive. It does seem excessive, but certainly the only reason people were developing those bombs is to get there first. And historically, you might be glad that we got them before, say, I don't know, Germany or Japan. So different times, the only reason we developed those bombs was to use them. But then when we used them, we went, oh, we knew what the physics were like, but we didn't know what the human cost would be. So that's been, a lot of the reason for reflection. All right, back to the original. Don't wear that shirt. Okay, so don't wear that shirt overseas because our thought is we stepped in and saved your butt. Our friends in Europe think, why just stay out for years? And why did you let it get so bad when you had the power not to allow all these tragic things to happen? So what you'll see post-World War II is what you've seen in the modern era, kind of sort of with a sort of Trump revision maybe, of the United States wanting to be at the center or the policeman of the world, or we want to solve all the world's problems, or at least the world's problems that affect the United States in a more direct way. So, as you answer question number 4, talk about why the war effort unified people, and you can talk about shared sacrifice, you can talk about millions of people being sent overseas to fight a common enemy of fascism or racism or something of those sorts. And there's a section in the book where they talk about how really assimilation is pushed pretty hard during this time period. But you'll see common sacrifice as a pretty good theme, and that's not a bad thing for our current situation. So I think the World War II chapter probably should bring you some encouragement, which is really why I wanted you to read the textbook, so you would be encouraged. All right, I hope you've enjoyed my backyard. It's probably better than the boxes of cereal. You can tell there's lots of birds, and somebody is sawing in the background. And I have wind chimes because I'm old and people give old people wind chimes for gifts. So I hope you're doing well. Please email me if you have any questions about World War II. And for those of you that love the military side, I'm sorry, it's a survey course, but if you want to read about something military side for your book review, I would highly encourage you to do that. Again, stay well, be nice to your families, be patient with everybody, and email me if you have any questions. Take care of yourselves. Signing off from the backyard. Bye.